This is great stuff. Phil Bennett covering. Chased by Alistair Scott. Brilliant! Oh, that's brilliant! Brian Williams. John Lewis. Great dummy. Tell David, along the halfway line.
Hi everyone, this is Keep Talking's guide to this year's Rugby World Cup, which is being held in Japan from September the 20th through to the final on the 2nd of November. There are 20 teams involved, divided into 4 groups of 5. The favourites, as usual, have to be the All Blacks from New Zealand. The Springboks from South Africa also have a very, very good team. And also from Europe, Wales, Ireland and England are in with a chance. In fact, you know, there's a number of teams, maybe 5 or 6 teams that are going to actually win it this year. It's very open. Maybe just a little bit behind those teams, Australia, who always put in a good performance, France, who are unpredictable but have some amazing rugby talents, and Argentina could also spring a few surprises. They've got some very exciting players as well. The host nation, Japan, is not a big rugby nation. They'll give it everything, but I can't see them getting out of their group, which I think contains Scotland and Ireland, so it won't be easy for them. And unfortunately, Italy are in a group with New Zealand and South Africa. So I think it's probably goodbye Italy after 4 games, unfortunately. But hey, you never know. So what are the essential ingredients of rugby union? Well, this thing for a start, the oval ball. You're never quite sure what it's going to do when it hits the ground. It's a little bit bigger than an American football. The playing area, very similar to football, 100 metres long by about 70 wide. That's not, the length doesn't include the in-goal area, so that's the actual playing surface. Each team has 15 players, 8 forwards and 7 backs, and 8 substitutes on the bench, all of whom can be used. So in play at any one time, unless someone has received a yellow or a red card, there will be 30 players on the pitch. They play for 2 halves of 40 minutes. The clock normally isn't stopped, but it is if there's a bad injury or if the referee needs to check with the video referee whether a try should be given and so on. But apart from that, the clock keeps running. Remember that you can kick forwards, but unlike American football, where the quarterback is brilliant at throwing the ball huge distances very accurately, in rugby you have to pass backwards. So although you're moving forwards, you're running forwards, the pass has to go backwards. And even if the ball just comes off your finger and goes forwards, that's called a knock-on and is a foul. And finally, another big difference between American football and rugby is that you can't block another player. That's the foul of obstruction. It will be a penalty. And you can't tackle a player without the ball either. You can only tackle a player when he or she is carrying the ball. I say she, this is the Men's Rugby World Cup, but women's rugby is becoming very popular as well. So how do you score points in rugby? Well, rugby is a game of territory and possession, so you want to move the ball down the pitch, keeping hold of it if possible. You can kick the ball forwards, but obviously there the danger is that you're going to give possession to the other team. So the best way is running with the ball, passing, and sometimes as well a group of players together drives the ball forward. Anyway, you want to get territory to get into a position where you can either kick a penalty goal, which will give you 3 points, a drop goal, which will give you 3. A drop goal is where the ball, you drop the ball, at the moment it hits the ground, you kick it. It's a very difficult skill. That gives you 3 points, like a penalty. The quickest way to accumulate points is to score tries. That's where you put the ball down over the opponent's goal line. It's not enough just to run it in, like in American football. You actually have to place the ball on the ground. And that gives you 5 points, and that can become 7 if you convert the try. A conversion kick will give you an extra 2 points. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the players. I'll try to explain, well, first I'll give you their names and try and explain their roles on the pitch. And I'll do it with pictures of this year's probable starting 15 for England. So we started with the forwards, the 8 forwards. They're divided into 3 groups: front row, second row, back row. The front row consists of 2 props, the 2 guys at the front on either side. These are the guys that you see locking with the opposing players in a scrum. They have to have massive upper body strength, very strong legs, almost no neck. 120, 125 kilos is not unusual. One's called the tight head because in the scrum he has heads, the opponent's heads on either side of him, and the other one is called a loose head because he's only got one. And then in the middle between them is the hooker. The hooker is probably quite a similar size, but if anything a little bit light, a little bit smaller, but not much. You're still talking about very big men, as all of the players are on a rugby pitch. The hooker's job in a scrum is literally, as the name suggests, to hook the ball back with his foot when the scrum half puts it into the scrum. The hooker also has to throw the ball in from the side when the ball is kicked into touch. The hooker has to throw it between the 2 lines of forwards in a line out, which isn't easy when the ball's wet and maybe it's windy. Second row are the 2 biggest, tallest men on the pitch. The locks, numbers 4 and 5. So the props are 1 and 3 and the hooker is number 2. And number 4 and 5, they have to be able to push the scrum forward and also be very good at jumping in line-outs to catch the ball above their heads. Then the back row are 2 flankers and the number 8. The 2 flankers, who are called open side or blind side, depending on their position on the pitch and how close they are to the blind side, near the touch, and the other one, the open side, is on the side of the pitch where there's most space. These guys have to, again, to be very strong, very quick, good at tackling, very quick to run off the scrum to tackle the opposition. And also they have to be very good at what's called the breakdown, where somebody's tackled, the ball's on the ground. These guys have to be very often the first in there to try and get the ball from the opposition. And then the number 8, he's the guy at the back who's pushing, but he's also very often responsible for running off the back with the ball. They have to be good ball carriers, and very often they're not only tall but very, very massively built as well. Okay, and then the backs. Number 9 is the scrum half. He's probably going to be the smallest player on the pitch. Has to be extremely agile, very good at passing the ball, very good at decision making as well, deciding which way to go, and good at kicking because they often have to kick the ball over the scrum for their other attackers to run onto. Number 10 is the fly half, Owen Farrell in the case of England, who's a fantastic kicker, especially a place kicker. He hardly ever misses when he's got a penalty or a conversion, but also a very strong man at the same time and very good at tackling. The number 10, the fly half, basically is the equivalent of the playmaker in American football. They have to be very good at creating play, bringing other players in, and so on. 12 and 13 are the two centres. 12, as you can see, Manu Tuilangi, massive bloke, very fast, very difficult to stop. Generally speaking, the 12 is a little bit bigger than the 13. Henry Slade has an almost normal physique, you could say. But again, very, very good off his feet. And these guys have to be very good at tackling as well in defence. And the idea is that they're able to break through the line and score tries, or bring the wings into play. That's number 11 and 14, Johnny May and Anthony Watson in the case of England. These are the fast guys. They have to be very, very good at running down the sides or cutting and running difficult angles off the scrum. And also they have to be really good at catching the ball too, as does the fullback, number 15. The fullback is going to be bombarded in some games by high balls. They have to be very good at catching the ball, knowing that they're very likely going to be tackled very soon after that. So also has to be very quick off his feet, and also very fast. I mean, very often 11, 14 and 15 are interchangeable. That's the case with England anyway. And then, as I said before, the 8 players on the bench are really important, and a good team is always going to have 8 players on the bench who are the same level, as good as the people they're replacing. Because if they're a little bit weaker, then you're going to have big problems in the last 20-25 minutes of the game. Okay, now let's have a look at some of the terminology. First of all, rugby, like cricket, has laws, not rules and regulations. It's that important. And the person who's responsible for making sure that these rules are applied is the referee. Very important figure on the pitch. Maybe the best modern example of a referee is the great Welsh referee, Nigel Owens. If you go on YouTube, you'll see some wonderful conversations between him and the players. Then the referee is supported by 2 assistant referees, the touch judges, the guys with the flags who run up and down the side of the pitch and help the referee with some decision making. If the referee is not sure or hasn't been able to see what's going on, he may go to the TMO, the television match official, the video referee, who will help him out. Video referees are used quite a lot in rugby. They can be very important for making certain decisions, like whether a try has been scored or not. Then tackle is another important word. Tackle is when you try and stop an opponent or bring him to the ground to give you a chance of getting the ball off him. HIA is head injury assessment. That's if a player gets a bang on the head and the referee regards them as being in possible danger of concussion, then the player has to go off the pitch. They go through a number of tests. If they pass those, they can come back on. Otherwise, they can't. They can be replaced, obviously, by one of the substitutes who then swaps back when they come back onto the pitch. The same thing with blood replacement, as the name suggests. Someone gets a cut. They have to go off the pitch to get a couple of stitches put in, get it strapped up, and then normally they'll come back on again, and the blood replacement is the substitute who has come on in their place while they've been off the pitch. A ruck is where someone's been tackled, the ball is on the ground, players are contesting it on the ground, initially with their hands, then with their feet. That's called a ruck. If that happens without the ball touching the ground, if the ball is held up, that's called a maul. And a driving maul is when you get all of the forwards and sometimes some of the backs pushing the whole group forward. Someone's got the ball. If you can push them over the line and somebody flops onto the ground, that's called a driving maul. A scrum is the organised one as a result, for example, of a knock-on or another infringement of the rules. That's when all 8 forwards in an organised pattern lock together, the ball's put in the middle and they push and try and win the ball. That's a scrum. Okay, and now a line out is where the ball's gone off the pitch and the hooker throws the ball in, as I said before, between the 2 lines of forwards who have to jump and be lifted by their teammates to try and take possession of the ball. You may have noticed that on their legs some of the players have strapping, and that is to help the lifters get them off the ground. So just imagine, if a lock is about 2 meters tall, you're talking about a very, very great height off the ground. So that's the line out. The breakdown, it's another word you hear very often. Breakdown is when play stops, when somebody's been tackled, the ball's on the ground. It's that moment when opposing players, forwards, normally contest the ball and try and win it with their hands. So having a breakdown specialist, very often these are the flankers, is really, really important. Turnover is when you win the ball, you steal the ball from the opposition. Turnover, not turnover, please. Pass is obviously when you pass the ball to, hopefully, a member of your own team. Offload is similar, but it's normally used when somebody's being tackled and you just pass the ball not a great distance to somebody running through. That's a great skill. There's another kind of pass which really you don't want to receive. It's called a hospital pass. That's where somebody throws you the ball, but just in the moment you catch it, you're tackled. Because very often when you're catching the ball, you're not protected, and so it can be very, very painful. That's why it's called a hospital pass. Knock on is where the ball touches your hand, even just a fingertip, and goes forward. That results in a scrum with the other team having the put in, so they're probably going to win the ball. Advantage is also played, like it is in now a little bit in football, but it's only played for a few seconds in football. It can be anything up to a minute or even more in rugby. The referee will allow play to continue if he is awarded a penalty to see whether the team gets an advantage out of it or not. If they don't, play comes back to where the penalty was committed. And finally, overlap, it's another word you sometimes hear. This is where the ball's being run down the backs. You've maybe got 3 defenders, 4 attackers, you've got an extra man down the side. That's called an overlap. Okay, there's an offside rule in rugby. So if the players advance too far forwards beyond an imaginary line on the pitch, then they're offside, and that's a penalty. These are all different ways in which penalties can be given away. So offside, high tackles, that's if somebody tackles somebody around the neck or head, very dangerous, so that's a penalty. Collapsing a scrum, if one of the props usually pulls the scrum down, again, potentially very dangerous, especially for the neck area and the back. That's a penalty. If you're tackled and you don't release the ball, again, that's a penalty. There are other ways as well, but those are some of the most common ways in which you can give away a penalty. Also, by speaking back to the referee, dissent can also result in a penalty. It's not like football at all. You can also get a yellow card for deliberate fouls, for repeated fouls. If a team accumulates a lot of penalties, someone is going to get a yellow card. You go to what's called the sin bin, where you have to go for 10 minutes before you're allowed back on the pitch. And you might think, well, 14 or 15 players, what's the difference? But it does make a difference, especially if you're running the ball down the backs. You've got a much better chance of having an overlap if you've got an extra man. Dangerous play also results in a card, but this time a red card, which means you are off the pitch for the rest of the game. So I hope that's been useful for you. I hope you'll watch some of the Rugby World Cup. It's on Rai and Rai Sport in Italian, unfortunately. You can watch it at home, but why not go to a pub where they've got a big screen and watch it there with other rugby enthusiasts. Black Stuff in Udine is a great place for that. Even better, try and watch it somewhere with an English commentary. Otherwise, you know, all of this work I've put in is going to be in vain. So try and watch it, or a couple of games in English. I think if you go to the website of worldrugby.com, they have some live streams or maybe recorded games there, so you could watch those with English commentary. So have a great Rugby World Cup and sayonara.
Dawson goes through, makes a wonderful break. He's tackled 15 metres from the line. Backs there. Wilkinson will drop for goal. There's offside surely against England. No, Martin Johnson has it. He drives. There's 35 seconds to go. This is the one. It's coming back for Johnny Wilkinson. He drops for World Cup glory. Yes! It's up. It's over. He's done it. Johnny Wilkinson is England's hero yet again. And there's no time for Australia to come back. England have just won the World Cup.